Well, welcome to the 700 Club. I'm Gordon Robertson.
And I'm Terry Mewson. People with untreated mental illnesses are 16 times more likely to be killed during encounters with law enforcement.
That's why some cities are now deploying mental health experts to help diffuse these interactions. Part of this report from Charlene Aaron are disturbing, so please, viewer discretion is advised.
They don't have nothing but my baby. I don't know what to do.
This is body camera footage of Sonia Massey and police 16 hours before a gunshot ended her life on July 6th. The day before the deadly encounter in her home, Massey's mother, Donna, called 911 to report her daughter was having a mental health episode.
When's the last time you took your medicine? It's written down last night.
During her call, Donna Massey pleaded with police to not hurt her daughter. The next day, Sonia Massey called 911 to report a prowler. Officer Sean Grayson and his partner responded to the call. After searching outside, the officers entered the home, and the situation escalated. That's when Gracie shot Massey in the head, killing her. He faces multiple charges, including murder, and if convicted, faces a sentence of 45 years to life. Her death evokes painful memories and fear among some in the Black community.
A lot of people like that, like, oh, I feel safe when I'm around the police, or it's okay, the police are here. But sometimes for us, it's like we never know if we are actually safe.
Therapist Dr. Anita Phillips describes this as collective trauma, which can add to the distrust of police.
I had the opportunity to support a young Black woman who struggles with bipolar disorder, and she was experiencing a severe depressive episode, which had left her struggling with suicidal thoughts. I am on text, on the phone, supporting her, and suggested that maybe it might be bad enough that she needed to call 911. And her response was, as much as my suicidal thoughts are tormenting me right now, I'm probably safer if I don't.
Lisa Daly heads Treatment Advocacy Center, a nonprofit that advocates for those with severe mental illness. She points out the increase in people calling 988, the suicide and crisis hotline, since the new numbers launched in 2022.
There have been something like 10.8 million contacts with that system, which is a massive up, and that's been increasing over time.
According to Daly, police interaction with such callers often turn negative.
The likelihood of a person in a mental health crisis being involved in a fatal law enforcement encounter was 16 times higher than it was for people who were not involved in a mental health crisis at the time that they had a law enforcement interaction. So it is a pretty stunning statistic.
Treatment Advocacy Center also notes that many reaching out to police during a mental health crisis may be experiencing something called anosognosia, also called lack of insight. It's a biological condition that prevents a person from perceiving that they have a mental illness.
It's present in anywhere between about 40% and 50% of individuals that have schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. And the important thing to keep in mind in the context of crisis calls is that if a person does not believe that they have an illness, they will respond differently to law enforcement. This particular population is extremely vulnerable when they're in an interaction with law enforcement.
To better understand the problem, Daly's organization has created a specific database to track what she calls preventable tragedies. Research also shows notable racial disparities when it comes to policing and mental health calls.
You do definitely see, there is an increased impact to communities of color for really any kind of law enforcement. A significant factor is like communities of color or marginalized communities may be less likely to get the timely interventions that they need. So they may be in a situation where they're in the community for longer periods of time, not being treated, so that they escalate to crisis. And then once it gets to that crisis point, it's much more likely to result in a really negative outcome.
This, combined with the nation's overall mental health crisis, is leading more cities to enlist skilled health experts for assisting officers in the field. One example is the Support Team Assisted Response Program, also known as STAR, underway in Denver, Colorado. Instead of automatically sending police officers on each 911 call, any request related to mental health distress leads to the dispatch of a paramedic and licensed behavioral health clinician. something that could have meant a different outcome for Massey.
When they get that dispatch, they can go to the scene. Trauma-informed care, medical assessment or triage, crisis intervention, de-escalation, transportation as needed, and then connection to different resources or follow-up care.
Despite being able to answer only half of the calls last year due to staffing issues, the program did respond to more than 7,000 calls. Results many believe are still worth expanding across the country. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Well, if you're like me and you're disturbed by the number of police shootings where either people in custody or in the case we just saw, a woman who's obviously mentally disturbed, and there's plenty of police records for that because of the number of encounters, but it looks like the two officers on that scene, particularly the officer that shot her to death, he doesn't seem to know that history. That makes no sense to me. And how do we get better at this? Well, having ride-alongs with mental health professionals is certainly one way to do it.
Sure.
Here in Norfolk, we've had chaplain ride-alongs in order, when a chaplain comes into the scene, it seems to really diffuse it.
Exactly.
So you have a decreased likelihood of it's going to turn into something violent. But I still have to say the police needed to do a much better job of policing themselves. Yeah. And where is that? They talk about the blue line and we protect our group. Well, you've got to start thinking, are you protecting society? That protect and serve motto needs to get real. And if you know there's somebody who has violent tendencies or is hyper-aggressive and they're in the police, well, that should be a self-police no. There should be an evaluation so that they no longer carry a weapon on the streets with a badge and somehow think they have the authority to do really horrible things to people.
Yeah. And we love the police.
Yeah.
But, it's like asking, we need the police, but it's like asking them to go out there without being fully equipped and needs an overhaul a little bit.
Where do our laws come from? Are they simply made up by people?
Or is there a deeper moral code that guides humanity?
There is a law that is universal. A law beyond human creation.
And a standard that judges our self-established ways.
One not written in ink, but in the very nature of reality.
And it has shaped our government and culture.
But is this higher law relevant today?
How can it guide us on present-day issues?
And why is it challenged in the modern world?
Join us as we delve into the foundations of law.
From its roots and eternal truths.
To its influence on landmark legal decisions.
On human rights, religious freedom, and our Constitution.
I'm Mark David Hall.
I'm Professor Walton.
I'm Professor Jeff Brauk.
Let's get into Foundations of Law.
Get this free online course today. Call now or visit cbn.com/law.
Well, Chase and Terry could only watch as their savings dwindled. All the while, their bills kept getting bigger. Well, then God showed up for this military couple in a way they never expected. And that's thanks to you and CBN's Helping the Homefront.
When Chase and Terry married, Airman Chase was glad he had a solid career in the Air Force.
The Air Force has been really a positive experience for me. It's given me a lot of career direction in my life.
I want you to do this.
At home, Terry takes care of their two daughters during long separations.
She is really good at making sure that everything gets taken care of with the kids. She's very task-oriented and is able to take care of all of that stuff without me really having to worry about it.
When the family transferred to Keesler Air Force Base in Mississippi, they bought their first home. Chase and Terry quickly realized there were many things that needed their attention. The water heater needed replacing, and some plumbing needed repairs. The couple dipped into savings to do it.
I'm watching our savings dwindle, and I don't have a way to replace that.
Their financial situation got worse when they learned their HVAC system was dying, just as the sweltering summer heat arrived.
We knew it was old, but I don't think we realized just how inefficient it was. We've watched our electric bill go up every summer by You know, I think this past year, the average was over $100 more a month than it was the year before.
Chase and Terry rely on their faith that God will provide the money.
The path may not be clear to me right now how this is going to work for us, but I just have faith that we will figure out a way to make it work.
Terry attends a faith-based military support group in partnership with CBN. Director Megan Brown invited the couple over to tell them helping the Homefront was paying for the plumbing repairs and water heater replacement.
That's incredible. We're eternally grateful.
There's a little bit more to the surprise. We're really excited to share that we will be able to replace your entire HVAC system, all the ductwork, and relieve this immense financial burden as you guys walk through the season.
I mean, it just doesn't really feel real.
It's an immeasurable relief to me knowing that this is not going to be something I have to worry about.
The couple was reimbursed for the water heater and plumbing. A few days later, their entire HVAC system was replaced, all thanks to partners like you.
God always shows up in ways that I don't expect, and I would have never expected help like this from CBN.
We're just immeasurably grateful for the CBN partners who are really helping us. It's a tremendous weight off my shoulders.
Helping the Homefront is all designed to help active duty military families. So often in the military today, there's a whole lot more month than there is money. And it's kind of an untold story that the salary for enlisted is not that great. And so we're expecting great sacrifice from our active duty military, but at the same time, the rate of pay is very, very low. When you have a spouse, when you have a parent in active duty military, quite clearly you are serving too. And we want to recognize their service, to come alongside them, that when they have problems financially, we can be there with them. We can have churches come alongside and support them and be part of making sure they know the whole community loves them and appreciates what they're doing. If you want to be a part of that, there are a couple different ways you can. You can give directly to Helping the Homefront. There's a place on the giving page on cbn.com where you can do that. You can also call and say, I want to give to Helping the Homefront. You can put Helping the Homefront on the memo line of a check and mail it to us at CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia 23463. You can also join the 700 Club and be a member. Every gift goes into everything we do. You're a part of everything when you join the 700 Club. So if you'd like to do that, call us right now, 1-800-700-7000. Terry?
Joseph and Essence Green had 3 children at home and 1 in the NICU. Their youngest, Grace, was born at just 23 weeks. Doctors gave her a slim chance to live. And while this baby was fighting for her life, Joseph and Essence were fighting with each other.
It completely turned upside down. I mean, everything just like switched overnight.
It seemed nothing could shake Joseph and Essence Green's relationship or their faith. That is until July 2019, when their 4th child, a daughter they named Grace, was born prematurely.
So here I am having a child at 23 weeks, and it's like, what's next?
Doctors were very, they wasn't very optimistic. They was like, she has a slim chance to live.
Between having a child in the neonatal ICU, work, and caring for their 3 other children ranging from 8 months to 12 years old, the couple quickly felt the strain.
Is she going to survive all of this? Am I going to be a parent that lost his child?
Not knowing if my daughter was going to make it, having an 8-month-old baby at home, and then, 2 other children on top of that was a lot.
Meanwhile, life didn't stop. In fact, it became overwhelming as each dealt with the heartbreak and fears in their own way. For Essence, it was continuing to go to work, something her husband didn't understand.
Man, it was tough. For me, it was just like, why as a mother, you don't see the need to be by our daughter's bedside, and she's fighting for her life. So it frustrated me.
And for me, mentally, I just felt like I could not handle that. I felt like it was too much. Of course, his expectations just seemed high, but at that point, they started to seem unrealistic.
In all their years of marriage, the couple rarely argued. Now it seemed it was all they did, as their disagreements escalated into angry shouting matches and finger-pointing. As children of divorce, both say they were tempted to handle the conflict as their parents had done.
It was times that I was just like, man, this is too much. Sometimes I didn't want to, be a father. Sometimes I didn't want to be a husband just because it was just overwhelming. And then just learning how to be a husband and a father my own self, because my father wasn't part of my life. Basically, he taught me when times get tough, basically, just leave.
And I don't know if I actually used the word divorce, but I was just like, I'm done with this, because it was too much. It got to a point, like, we talk about my mother not being there. I'm sorry to say, but, she taught me how to run. And so it's like, I can just leave this situation.
Meanwhile, prayers continued for baby Grace as she was barely improving. Joseph and Essence both admit there were times they wondered where God was in this time of need, for their baby and for their marriage.
I felt like I was failing God too, ultimately. Like, God, I'm not doing this husband thing right. I'm not being a great example as a father. So Lord, I need you. This is a moment where I really need to surrender and just allow you to teach me how to play both of these roles, because right now I am failing.
I think sometimes we think we have to have these elaborate prayers and different things. It was just a small whisper, Lord, why am I dealing with this?
Then in October, after watching their daughter fight for her life for 3 months, Essence got a call from the hospital to come immediately.
And my baby has coded. They're sitting there giving her CPR. And I looked down at my baby, and the doctors at this time had told me they had worked on her for 2.5 hours. Because I'm looking at my baby, right? No life. Everything's flatlined. The doctor tells me to call my family in to prepare for a funeral. And I look over at the lady, I said, you can call Jesus if you can get him on the line. And I will never forget that the alarm starts to ring off in the hospital while the doctor is still talking to me. They go and say, we have a pulse. And he literally brings my baby back to life. And so I understood in that hour that God was with me. And he said in his word that he would never leave me nor forsake me. He will be with me always. And that was a comforting knowing that he was with me.
That was just a game changer for me too. God showed us then that he's still with us.
With a new perspective, the Greens began working together to bring peace back to their household and their marriage. Through prayer and counseling from the leaders at church, they realized they needed to put God at the center of their lives once again.
So we eventually did come around and apologize to each other on how we treated each other through our stress.
I feel like God is touching his heart at this time, right? He's being the Joseph I know that I met. And he's being more considerate of my feelings.
After more than a year, Grace was released to go home. Although she still needs ongoing care, Joseph and Essence continue to find hope through their trust in Jesus. They also launched the Marriage Makeover, a ministry for married couples whose relationships need God's healing.
I say this all the time often, that grace has taught me how to have grace. No more pointing the finger, but, looking to God and asking him, okay, what do we do?
So to look back now and to see where we are now, it just goes to show how good God is, how he was with us every step of the way, even when we didn't feel like he was present, and how his strength and his glory is it's amazing.
Marriage is hard. My husband and I used to say marriage takes 3, you, me, and God. And it's hard to be open to each other. It's hard to be willing to change. It's hard to understand the differences in the other person when we selfishly want them to be like us, to function like us, to think like us. And it's hard enough to do all of that when everything's going well. But then along the way, life happens, doesn't it? I mean, in this scenario, they seem to be going well with 3 children, and it was the pressure of a 4th child who wasn't given much hope to live. And you know, you're at the hospital all the time. It's interrupting your life at home, and you have different opinions about how each of you should handle that. Life is difficult. And I love what Joseph said. He said, I just went to the Lord and said, God, I'm not doing this husband thing very well. You know, God already knows it. It's not like we have to tell him, but you know what's in that? The acknowledgement that we need him, that we can't do it on our own. And when we do that, he's right there. He's waiting for us to invite him into that moment, into the situation that we're in. But here's the other key on that. Joseph was teachable. He was teachable. And then God led them through those circumstances that made them both realize that God had a plan, God had a purpose. God uses our pain. You know, pain isn't something that we should always just wonder, why me? Pain is something to be learned from. And God's always teaching us. They were open to being taught. If we have to have things our own way, whether it's with God or with each other, it does not bode well for our relationship on either side. But when we come to him humbly and say, God, I can't do this. I don't know how to do this. I'm not doing it well. Will you show me? Will you change me? The great thing in their story was Essence was willing to do the same thing. And then they said they began to work together. You know, there's that power of unity that we talk about so much, and that when there's unity, God commands a blessing. If you're struggling in your marriage today, go to Jesus. Just go to him with honesty. He already sees and knows, but go with him to him with the kind of honesty that says, God, come into this mess. Come into the middle of my situation. Change me, change us, change our household. You have the opportunity to be forever changed by the King of Kings. If you're struggling in your relationship, call and ask us for this love and marriage resource. It shares with you what the Word of God has to say about marriage, and it's a lot. We want you to have this. It's free. 1-800-700-7000 is our number. Call and ask for it, and while you're calling, ask for prayer at the same time. I want to leave you with these words from Romans 5:8 today. But God showed us his great love for us by sending Christ to die for us while we were still sinners. God bless you.
A nation in a fight for its existence becomes a model of hope, community, and innovation. So how does Israel thrive despite its constant struggles?
I think Israel may be the most resilient country in the world.
From integrating youth into national service to companies supporting working parents.
We do a better job of maximizing human potential.
Explore a culture built on belonging.
It's this incredible sense of we are home.
Solidarity.
We're all encouraging each other, lifting each other up. We're a unit.
And service.
Everyone knows they have a part, and everyone knows how to pivot from normalcy to crisis on a dime.
Join CBN's Gordon Robertson to discover Israel's true innovation. Its people.
We are not going to be normal. We are going to be exceptional.
And I think that is the genius of Israel.